Okay, welcome to the May 22nd SANDAG Audit Committee meeting. Thank you to all of our wonderful staff. I am here at the SANDAG headquarters watching their tech geniuses work. But before we jump into the meeting, I will ask our clerk to confirm that we have a quorum. Tessa?
Thank you, Chair. We have a quorum for this meeting.
Okay, because this is a new process for all of us, I'm going to ask our legal counsel, Amber Lynn, to go over basic instructions for both the Audit Committee members and members of the public to participate in the meeting. Amber Lynn?
Good afternoon. This is Amber Lynn Griffin, Deputy General Counsel. As per instructions, you have all been added to this meeting with the ability to speak freely throughout the meeting. So please take care to mute yourself when you are not speaking so that we can eliminate any background noise. If you have a question or a comment, or you would like to make a motion or to second a motion, please click on the raise hand icon that is at the top right of your screen. The chair is able to see a list of all audit committee members who have raised their hands and will call on you at the appropriate time. You will see that your microphone icon at the top right of your screen will turn from red to green when you are unmuted. Although there is a comment box into which you can type, we will not be using that for purposes of this meeting, so please do not use that function. As for voting, by state law, all votes in a teleconference meeting must be by a roll call vote. After there's been a motion and a second, the clerk will call for the vote of each member individually, and that member will unmute themselves to vote. At the conclusion of voting, staff will post the result of the vote on the screen and the chair will announce the result. We will be using SANDAG's voting system in the background, so you will see the voting results in their ordinary format on your screen. If you see that your vote was entered incorrectly, please raise your hand at that time and the chair will call on you to correct the vote. As for members of the public, we have asked that comments be emailed to the clerk in advance of the meeting. Any comments that were sent by 4 p.m. yesterday were provided to you in advance of this meeting. However, the public can also email comments during today's meeting. Those should be sent to clerk@sandag.org, identifying the item number to which the comments pertain and the name of the commenter. After the conclusion of the presentation, the clerk will read all comments that were submitted during the meeting. Being mindful of the number of items today and the need to keep our quorum, the chair has set a limit of 1 minute per comment. If a comment takes more than this time to read, only the first minute will be read, but the entirety of the comment will be made a part of the meeting record. So thank you for your time. That concludes my instructions.
I'm reading my notes. To speak, when you say raise your hand, I can see Paul and Bob. Can they physically raise their hand, or they have to hit the little hand button on there?
So, Chair, let me answer that question. This is James.
Hi, James.
So your board members or your committee members are all in as panelists except for Stuart Halpin. So they can just simply unmute themselves. Stuart will have to raise his hand, or I'll just have to leave him unmuted the entire time.
All right, but it might be easier for me, Paul and Bob, if you physically raise your hand. I can see you better, okay? Okay, and then on James, you do not want them to mute themselves, or you do?
Yes, they mute if they're not speaking so that we don't have background noise interfering with the audio.
Okay. Okay, and so with that, let's get ready with item number 1, the approval of the meeting minutes. The Audit Committee is asked to approve the minutes from its February 28th, 2020 meeting, the one I wasn't at.
Paul Dostart moves to approve.
Second.
Halpern, second.
Okay. Doser was first and Halpert was second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, do you have to do roll call, Tessa?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, Chair. We do need to do this as a roll call vote.
Okay.
So thank you. The Chair Faber.
Aye.
Vice Chair Wells is absent. Mr. Dostart.
Votes yes.
Mr. Halpern.
Aye.
And Mr. Monson.
Yes.
Okay, and Tessa, the reason we're doing that under the state law for
virtual
meetings. Okay, got it.
Yes,
so we have to do a
sir.
roll call on every single vote. If I
Yes,
forget,
sir.
remind me. Okay, got it.
And that item passes unanimously with 1 member absent.
Okay. Did we have any? Do we have any
The
public
record-
comments on that? I should have asked you that at the beginning. I'm sorry.
It's okay. There were no public comments on item.
Okay, then let's move on to item number 3. We have Hassan. Hassan and I are actually sitting in the same room. So I'm going to mute myself so we don't get feedback. And it's time for his executive director's report. Do we have any?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Go ahead.
There were no non-agenda public comments either.
Good, excellent. Okay, so now we'll go to Hassan.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe Mr. Paul Dastart has a question before I start.
I think that's the place where we do it if it's for us as well. Chairman Bill, I see that the Vice Chairman Mayor Wells has been absent 2 meetings, and I know that he was in the newspaper. He had a serious automobile accident. Do we have any update on Mayor Wells' physical condition?
Yes, I do. He is doing well. He's doing well. He's recovering. Actually, he has participated in a couple of meetings after the accident, but he's doing well, and he gives his regards. I spoke to him personally. Thank you for asking. I'm going to let him know that you're asking about him.
Thank you very much.
Hassan, why don't you go into your report?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon to all of you. There are few items to update you on. I'm going to start with what we call federal certification. Every 4 years, we get either certified or not as a metropolitan planning organization for the San Diego region. This past weeks, the Federal Transit Administration, Federal Highway Administration spent two days with us looking at our processes, looking at what we do as an MPO, how well we do it, etc. And Elisa Arias and Phil Trump from our staff led that effort. A lot of work, a lot of documentation, 2 days of meetings. And because of the great work, the preliminary result of the certification as follows. So you could come up from the certification with either corrective action, recommendation, and commendation. And I'm going to start by corrective action. I'm happy to report that there are no corrective action recommended by the federal agencies. There were several recommendations. Some of these recommendations, like consider language in the public participation plan that discusses performance-based planning and program, project-specific implementation, performance measurement, encourage coordination with Caltrans and Transit District to develop agency-wide plans. And we accept these recommendations because we believe they fall in line with what we're planning to do. But we also, I'm happy to report, we received several commendations in several areas, in the freight planning, in the diversity and equity program, in the leadership and system engineering, engagement with the tribal governments, and near and dear to your heart, we got commendation for establishing the Office of the Independent Auditor, which is the result of AB 805 legislation, and headed by our excellent auditor, Mary Kay. This commendation is much appreciated by agencies that end up funding you. So for now, good or bad for you, you stuck with us as an MPO for the next 4 years until the next certification. So that's on the certification. That's good news, and I think we might have additional recommendation and commendation by the time they do the final report. But that's the preliminary report. The good news is there is no corrective action. Update you on the Del Mar Bluff. Yes, sir. Yeah. Del Mar Bluff. I made the Del Mar Bluff stabilization one of the 5 agencies' priorities because I frankly don't think we should ever be in a situation where we pray a lot during a rainstorm that nothing bad happened. Working with the state agencies, I can tell you right now, we're moving toward getting the funds needed to once and for all for the next 20 to 30 years, stabilize the bluff and move into the long-term solution for that corridor. That's a promise I made to my team, I'm making to you, and we're moving in that direction, working with our partner in CTD. On the regional transportation plan, I want to emphasize again, the regional plan is still on schedule. A draft plan will be released in April of 2021. A final plan will be adopted in the fall of 2021. People ask me this morning, how does the plan look? Does it meet the requirement? And my answer is, there will be no plan if we don't meet the requirements. You only put a plan out if you can meet the requirement. Otherwise, you'll have no plan. And therefore, we're still working hard on schedule to move that plan forward. If you recall, we were supposed to do the unveil March 27th. Then COVID-19 happened. Communicating with the chairman of the Transportation Committee and the Regional Planning Committee, Chair Desmond and Chair Salas, we agreed that presenting the next stage of the plan will not do justice to the plan via internet, so we were waiting for us to get back together so we can do it. Obviously, we can't wait forever. We're going to wait a couple of more months. If it doesn't work, we'll do it via the internet. The major we have over 100 construction projects around the region, the biggest being the Mid-Coast Trolley. Happy to report to you that the construction continues in full swing. The crews are building now the parking structure near the Noble Drive station. And the project continued to be on budget and now is just a little bit ahead of time because we're able to do more closures with the light traffic. A couple of weeks ago, we started a program called Shared Street, where SANDAG would provide $5,000 to any city or county, if they wish to share their streets, maybe close them for a couple of hours, have picnic areas, have tables, and this $5,000 is not a competitive. If a city is interested and they apply, we will get it. 4 cities have submitted applications so far: Santee, Oceanside, Imperial Beach, and Chula Vista. The deadline for this program is 5 p.m. today. So if you think of a city that are interested, we're still open. We provide funding. If we don't get an additional funding, additional cities, the remaining funding will be given as an extra bonus to the cities that submitted. Just moving quickly to the state May budget revise, Governor Newsom released the May revise painful $54 billion decrease in revenues because of COVID-19. What does that mean to transportation? According to CalCAG, the California Association of Council of Governments, all the planning and engineering would remain in the budget in case we have a stimulus. But there is no question that there is about $1.8 billion expected to decline from the transportation funding by 2024. $1.2 billion in the year 20 and 2021. Sales tax are down by 27%. And we're still monitoring the impact of this. We're still waiting for Washington to act on a national stimulus to know the full impact of transportation. And I believe, I said that in my report a couple of months ago, that last month, San Diego region received $40 million from the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program to our Los Angeles corridor. $5 million of which went to the bluff stabilization, $7.1 million went to MTS to do a third track project in El Cajon Transit Center, and $21.4 million is to actually move the existing maintenance facility in National City and build a new one. This is $40 million more than we had last year. So I'm really pleased with that. Our region is good toward the implementation of all of this. let me conclude by saying the board earlier today approved our draft budget unanimously. And I want to thank Mary and her team and Chair Bill Pepper. I murder his name every time. I have a problem with the PMB, so I call him Chairman. So the Chairman helped, Mary's help, the audit staff help in answering some of the board questions, given that they were given an assignment in 2 days to come up with an answer that would take a few months, and I appreciate their work. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if the member have any.
Hassan, maybe why don't we give our members a little 30-second comment. I was going to do it at the end of the meeting, but you're here about our loss in our community from MTS. Can you? I'm not sure everybody knows how important that loss, how bad that loss was for us.
Yeah, let me, we had a video to show to the board last board meeting. We lost Paul Jablonski, as many of you heard in the news. It was a shocking loss, still not sinking in. Just the Thursday before he passed on Sunday, we were in a Zoom talking about business. At a young age, our hearts and prayers goes to his wife and 4 kids and grandkids. Unfortunately, it's still unclear whether we're going to be able to celebrate his life. But last Friday, there were a bus procession on his behalf and a trolley horn salute on his behalf. I can tell you I didn't know Paul for a long time, but I used to hear about Paul before I joined San Diego. He's one of the very respected professionals nationally and internationally. He made his mark on the transit world. As a matter of fact, after the American Planning Transit Association is trying to change the rule to put his name for a lifetime achievement. It is very touching. I personally will miss Paul. I'm still not accepting that he's not with us. He's a great professional. He fights hard for what he believes in. We're going to miss him, and in your behalf, our condolences and hearts and prayers to his family.
Thank you, Hassan. And it's a loss, to MTS, but it's a loss to SANDAG and the entire San Diego community. We keep his family in our prayers. And does any of our board members have any questions for Hassan at this time? Okay, well, thanks, Hassan, for being here.
Thank you.
Then, do we have any public comments on Hassan's, or any?
Thank you, Chair. There are no public comments on item 3.
Okay, and no further member comments? So then we will move on to item 4, which is the update on the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor activities from Mary Kay. What do I have to do to get Mary hooked up here?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Mary. It's your time.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Audit Committee. Welcome to this first virtual meeting, and I hope that our next will be person-to-person, face-to-face, live, which is what I prefer, of course. I wanted to basically introduce a new member of the OPA office, which I'm excited to have with us. I'm gonna come out of it for a little bit and let Michelle jump in. This is Michelle Ludwig. She is our new auditor, the counterpart to Lloyd. And Michelle, take it away. I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Audit Committee. My name is Michelle Ludwig, and so I just recently joined the office in mid-April. A little bit about my background. I started my career at the Bureau of State Audits up in Sacramento, so I have some experience up there, and then I had moved on to CalSTRS as an auditor, so I have some experience in auditing pensions and also internal audits there. And then I actually moved back down here to San Diego area and worked for Caltrans District 11 for about 5 years. And over there I did some analyst functions and also right-of-way. And then eventually I ended up at the county in their Audits and Advisory Services Department for the last 6 years, and then joined SANDAG. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, nice to meet you, Michelle. And where are you dialing in from? What city do you live in, or where are you right now?
I live in Rancho Bernardo. So.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we go back to Mary? James?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, it's great to meet Michelle.
Yeah, I'm excited about having them. And we've got her already jumped into the audits that we're getting ready to take off and perform, which is the salaries and benefit and other compensation audit and the contracts audit. So we have 2 audits that we're beginning and have already dived into, have our program and our planning memorandums done and are underway and testing and diving into it. So we're hoping that the report will be to the Audit Committee for the salaries, benefits, and other compensation by the end of August. And of course, contracts is going to take much longer, but just getting it started is a big leeway for us in getting our office moving. It's one of the higher risk areas, so it will be good to get into it. The risk assessment still continues, of course, with a little bit of delay. We had a request to look at some salary or some budget information, as well as some other kind of sideways, including the virus throwing us off track a little bit, but not too much off track. We still are doing okay, and we'll have it issued probably in August or September. We are looking at the mandate. That's good news. I got to share that. I also sent you guys a link if you want to support. It's in public comment right now. The mandate test claim was filed, as you know, with your help and support. It got filed in March. It came back to us a little bit incomplete and needed a little additional information. We got that to them, and then they accepted it as complete, and it is currently for open public comment and support, or not support, whatever. It's up for public comment right now. I sent you the link. That will close by 3 p.m. on May 29th. And then from there, they will look at it and decide if there's a decision to move forward. If the decision to move forward happens, that's when they'll go in to determine if it is actually a mandate. And then we'll have a tentative scheduled hearing on it, I believe September 25th. So I'm excited about that. A really good help for us in getting the additional staff we need and helping get some of this cost covered. So that will be a great thing. And that's it on the, oh, I do need to bring up one more thing, sorry. We had talked last meeting about extending, looking into extension of time for the public members to try to get things on track. And I'm going to let Amber Lynn jump in here as soon as I'm done with the legalities of it. But basically, it would require we made changes to Board Policy 39, which could take some time considering the situation that we're in right now. So we determined that the quickest way to do this is, again, jumping into the upcoming June application process to renew and have the board members, or I'm sorry, the public members resubmit if they're interested, and also advertise for interest of the public, and then move that way. And Amberlyn, if you want to jump in here and kind of let them know our next steps moving forward, and why we're doing it this way.
Certainly. So Board Policy 39 does lay out a process for the selection of the public members for the Audit Committee, and that includes for members who are reapplying for a second term. And so we will be sending out information both to the current members and to members of the public in compliance with Board Policy 39, advising people of an opportunity to apply for a position, and really initiating the screening process, which is subject to approval by the board. So please stay tuned for additional information on that. We will make sure to get that out to you and to anyone else who may be interested.
Okay, with that, that concludes the update for the IPA.
Hey, Mayor, before we leave, on the letters on the mandate. I sent you mine today, it got submitted, but can we have Paul, Bob, and Sue also put the individual letters in? Do you want to explain how they have to do that, or how they could do that if they want to do that for us?
Yes, that would be wonderful. And I've already sent out a link. And all they have to really do is they could attach a letter and upload a letter to the link, or they could just write a comment in the comment box in support of it. It's that quick. It would take probably 5 minutes. But I have provided that link for them.
Would they be of equal validity? In other words, whoever reads these things, would they prefer a formal letter, or does a comment box do the job?
Paul, I think the comment box does the job. They really just want to know if you're in favor or if you're not in favor of the mandate is what they're really looking for as far as comment goes.
And we're clearly in favor, right? I mean, I think we should get the money. How much money was it, by the way?
Well, excluding my cost, because that's an offset that would be absorbed already by membership fees, approximately 5 to 6, even maybe 700,000 annually. So it would be the
comment for sure. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that concludes, unless there's questions, concludes my update for the office.
Anything else, Mayor? You're good?
I'm good.
Okay. Then let's, do we have any public comments on Mary's?
Stuart wants to speak.
Oh, Stuart, I'm sorry, Stuart, I lost you. Go ahead, Stuart.
No, that's okay. And I apologize for the cumbersome nature of this. We'll figure out the technology better for the next meeting. I just want to follow up to make sure I'm understanding Amber Lynn's comments. The decision to do the reapplication as opposed to the change to board policy 39 is a function of the time that it takes to make a change in the board policy. Is that what you were saying?
And this is Amber Lynn. Yes, in order to essentially change the terms of any audit committee members, it would require a revision to the existing board policy 39. And as I understood it, this was intended to be sort of a temporary measure to address some timing problems that we're experiencing right now. And I think after conferring internally and with the chair, the better path forward is to move forward with the existing reappointment or appointment of the public members, and then the audit committee, of course, has some requests pending to the executive committee and board of directors to make changes to its board policy 39 that you discussed at your last 2 meetings. That would change essentially the timing on terms. But again, that would be much more forward looking, so that would impact essentially the next terms.
Okay, I guess maybe I'm not fully understanding, because it just strikes me that the application process itself is something in the order of a 3-month process from initiation, advertising, interviewing, decision making, all that sort of thing. But in any case, I guess it is what it is, and I'll put aside my curiosity.
Amber Lynn, and that's a good point from Sue. What does the process entail for our 3 leaders?
So as far as the appointments for public members, board policy 39, as it is currently drafted, requires that any interested members of the public apply for the position. They are screened by a screening committee that is formed by the chair of the board. And then based on the recommendations of that screening committee, they are presented to the board of directors for approval. So that's the high level process that is required for appointment. Keeping in mind that board policy 39 also has a provision in it that states that current members will serve until a next member is appointed. So we do have a little bit of time where we can certainly get this process moving and get everyone's terms renewed or have new members come on board.
Amber Lynn, let me just ask a simple question. If we do nothing, we don't make any changes, when do Paul, Stuart, and Bob's terms end?
I believe that they were appointed at the end of June 2 years ago. So we're coming up on that process, but I think we feel that we can certainly handle this process, get the necessary notices out there and avoid any sort of lapse.
Okay, so Paul, Bob and Stu, number one, this is your chance to escape. I won't look if you want to run away right now, okay? But if you do want to stick around, how do you propose we go forward on this?
Okay, well, Amberlynn, thank you. You've answered one of my questions, which was if just the timing of when we're starting this application process would create a situation where we have a gap in the ability of the public members to continue until the next lot is chosen, so to speak. But so I appreciate the follow-up.
And just to clarify, and Amberlynn, correct me if I'm wrong, until new public members or the same ones are appointed, the current public members would continue, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I went off. So what do you propose? Let's see. What's the consensus? Mary, do you have an opinion on what we do?
Well, I recommend, since the current members can continue until other members, the application process is moved through, including them just being reappointed, then I would see no reason not to go down that road, and a request, I believe Amberlynn's General Counsel's office will help us with this process and move it forward.
Yes, Chair, just to follow up on that, SANDAG staff will be coordinating with the board chair, Chair Voss, to coordinate these efforts and get the process moving forward.
Okay, Bob, Paul, and Stu, are you okay with that, since we're talking about you in front of you?
That's fine, Paul, not start. I think it makes sense to have longer terms, at least for this first round, just in terms of the experience and learning curve.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
And
Hassan, do you want to say something?
You're not allowed to escape unless we tell you to escape. all doors are closed until.
Hey, Hassan, watch this.
Okay, so we don't need to take any, it's actually not an action item, but Amberlynn, do you have the direction you need?
Yes, and just as a follow-up for informational purposes, the changes that the Audit Committee has already requested to Board Policy 39 regarding the changes to terms and the changes to the chair and vice chair leadership, those are tentatively scheduled to go in front of the Executive Committee at its June 12th meetings. We should be able to report back to you fairly soon how those are progressing.
Okay. So Mary, is there anything else you want to talk about on your item? No? Okay, and we don't have any public comments. So that would mean we would go on to item number 5. So Paul, this is for everyone, the Audit Committee members' discussion regarding retaining an independent counsel. The Audit Committee was asked to discuss and take possible action regarding retaining independent counsel to represent the Audit Committee in the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor on audit or relative matters as it relates to SANDAG. Paul, you were the prime mover on this, so I'll let you comment first.
I will just say that I do favor such a proposal, and as I see it, this is not, I want to hit this really hard, this is not to hire a full-time lawyer to come to our meetings. I like Amberlynn, I like that connection. What I see this is providing is effectively the equivalent of, having a fire extinguisher in the kitchen. You hope you never use it. But if our committee were to have a situation where, and by the way, it's going on at the City of San Diego right now with an employee who has apparently been receiving improper gifts, and imagine that was a member of John Kirk's staff, or who knows what can happen, to then be in the situation that we need to scramble around. And that's not the time to go buy the fire extinguisher. You want it hanging on the wall of the kitchen ahead of time. And so this would be something that I see would have a very low cost, or possibly no cost other than our procurement cost. And hopefully it's somebody that we never call upon for years and years, but we have an attorney skilled in such matters, able to step in, advise our committee on matters that would be appropriate for independent counsel. Hopefully there'll be few of those, but they are foreseeable. Therefore, we should do it. That's my summary.
Yeah. And Amberlynn, the other member of the bar here, you know, it hasn't happened. It may never happen, but I can see a situation where somebody writes into our tip line and says, so-and-so contractor is dealing with SANDAG staff XYZ, and we don't think it's appropriate, and Mary's required to investigate. It just seems a little awkward on if it would be one of the people that you generally advise, Amberlynn, to be in that situation. So that's, I hope that never happens, but I could see theoretically that might happen. And Hassan, hold on, let me let Hassan go. He's sitting on my.
So I'm sharing the screen with the chairman here. And we're not following the social distancing, but we do have the mask. Yeah. He has his in mind. Let me just say, from my standpoint, and I'll let Amberlynn chime in here. I want to respect full independence of this office. And full independence will not be full if it end up using the general counsel office that reports to me. So I am totally ready and available to provide whatever resources to accomplish the total independence of Mary's office. Because as Mary and I have many discussions, our goal is one, to make sure the agency have the controls, does everything right, the public is getting what they bargained for, etc. So if this in any way or shape move to having the independent office be independent, I will be very supportive.
Well, you heard it here first. Money isn't an object, it sounds like. No, it is an object. It is an object because, as you know, Mary's been working hard and to get the state reimbursement.
But independence is important.
So we have two competing values. Number one, money's tight at SANDAG in this situation, but we need independence. So I don't know how, how we would balance that in your budget. But
I would say to Paul's point, we'll have Mary just make sure there's somebody on call if needed. I mean, we hope we never need it, but on call, we'll have a budget item for it in case we need to call on them. But we'll have Mary do that, not our chief counsel office do that, to have that independence.
I have an idea, but I want to let Stuart and Bob comment first. Do you have anything to add?
This is Bob. Yeah, and Hassan, thank you very much for your comments, because that was one of my big questions. Was this is something that needs to be procured and handled by Mary in her office? I think that's where you were leaning towards. Is that correct?
That's the intention. My job is to provide the funding for that if needed.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Stuart, do you want to say something?
Yeah, my only comment is, well, two comments. One, I'm supportive for all the reasons mentioned. The only thing I would say, and it sounds like you're going in this direction, is that the procurement sort of needs to be done ahead of time, right? Because the time frame of the procurement process is such that it can't be done in a reactive way. But it sounds like you're already thinking proactive on the procurement side. So that's
so if I may, Chairman, yeah. So if I may, I believe you don't mean to have a staff, you mean to have a service that you can access, legal service you can access.
Yes.
Yes, right, okay.
So my suggestion would be we set up a temporary ad hoc single subject subcommittee of Paul and myself, the two attorneys, to work with Mary to bring back to the audit committee either one recommended law firm or two to choose from, and then we make the decision which one to go from. We figure out the price, and they're going to be on call. There may be some standard retainer. We bring that back to you. Does that sound reasonable to you, Paul?
Yes, that jives with exactly the way I would see it. The only concern, we got to make sure that Mary approves, as I understand it, if we're going out for legal services as a standby independent counsel. I do not know if we need to publish and go through the full state procurement, or if we can say that we see this as a less than $15,000 a year job and do it with the sole source selection.
Yeah.
I don't know those rules in this case.
I was thinking Amber Lynn also answer that question. Is this something, what do you do when you need a small contract like this?
So this is Amber Lynn. We certainly, the one limitation that the audit committee would have to abide by would be complying with SANDAG's procurement rules, which everyone has already touched upon. And so really the procurement rules that we would need to follow would be based largely on the estimate of the amount of services that we anticipate needing. And that sometimes dictates the methodology that we're required to follow. But certainly SANDAG's excellent contracts and procurement staff can assist Mary and her team with getting a procurement rolling with a potential subcommittee as well and provide that.
So Amber, let me just say, let's say we set a limit not to exceed 25K for a year. What would the rules be if that were the limit?
Well, Bill, I was going to suggest that we work with Julie Wiley, who's the contract manager and procurement, and make sure that we abide by all the contracting and procurement policies of SANDAG and move with that direction. It's just to work with Julie and make sure that we're following.
Yeah, we'll have Julie contact Mary to tell her about what's the best way to go.
Yeah, and I assume the rules are different depending on the value.
Yeah, I mean, you could do sole source in some cases. You could not do sole source. I think Julie will be able to advise.
Okay, so Mary, we will. I'm assuming, Paul, this is your motion, which I'll second, and assuming it passes, Mary, we'll just delegate that to you to work that out, and then you and I and Paul will get on a call and we'll figure out how we put this out to bid, whatever that bid is.
So can you frame my motion, Bill? I want to make sure that you caught it correctly.
No, go ahead, Paul. It's yours.
Okay, Eberlyn, you've got
the motion is do what Paul says. Okay.
Well, I think it's fine. So Paul and Bill will be a subcommittee of 2 from our 5-member committee. We will confabulate and come up with we'll deal with the contracts officer to make sure we do it in accordance with law. We're looking for a standby in place legal counsel. My analogy is a fire extinguisher in the kitchen, just having it there in case you need it. And so this is a standby legal counsel. Maybe there's little or nothing for years and years, but we're going to have a fairly low number on it because we certainly do not see this being more than, I don't see it as more than 15,000 a year on an ongoing basis unless we get into a problem, and then it could be more, but I don't see problems. I just think it's a good idea to have. And then Bill and Paul will come back to this committee with a proposal for the committee to make a decision.
Is that fair, Amber Lynn?
Yes, I have that.
Okay. All right,
And
Mary, are you good with that?
Down to 10 words or less.
Mary, are you good? Can you guys hear Mary?
You're muted, Mary.
Okay.
Sorry, I was getting a lot of feedback, I think, so I muted myself so everyone could be heard. Yes, I am great with that. Thank you.
Okay. So, do you want to call a roll call on that motion?
Yes, Chair. Before I do, I'd like to state for the record that there are no public comments on item 5.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, yes, thank you. Chair Baber.
Aye.
Vice Chair Wells is absent. Mr. Dostart.
Dostart votes yes. And you've said item 5, but I see it as item 6. I want to be, why is it? Okay.
It's 5.
Yes, because
go to my notes.
You are probably looking at a prior agenda, Mr. Dostart, that had item 5. We removed that item, the discussion on member terms, and renumbered. So you may be looking at an old agenda.
I had marked it up, so I was on the wrong item, but yes, Dostart votes yes on this council.
Thank you. Mr. Halpern.
Halpern, aye.
And Mr. Monson.
Monson, aye.
Thank you. That item passes unanimously with one member agency absent.
Okay, so let's move on to item 6, the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor process for reporting and posting reports online. And do we have any public comments on item 6?
We do not have public comments on item 6.
Okay, so let's let Mary take it away.
This is to really just formalize somewhat a little more on, we've had several discussions around it, when we're going to post, how we're going to post, but I just wanted to formalize it. So I'm really bringing this matter to the committee to get some more concrete direction, how we're going to go about when a report is completed. We move it to the audit committee, and from the audit committee, it goes to the board, and how it goes to the board, either to take action, does it just go to the board for information? And then when does it get posted to the IPA's website? This is all required that it is available to the public under AB 805, but I really just wanted to get some more concrete direction from the audit committee on how they would like to see things move forward as far as reports, an official report versus just analysis being requested. And then again, how it moves to the board and what action it moves to the board with, as well as when we post it to the website. So if I could get some direction on that, I would be happy to do a policy on it, so we at least have something written on when we do it and how we do it. And then open for questions.
Okay, Paul, Stewart, or Bob?
DASTART is of the view that we should post these reports online. They ought to be numbered, 2020-1, 2020-2, whatever, a title. They ought to go up automatically, and we don't need to make the press do FOIA requests for them. They're there. And they ought to be on the SANDAG website in a special page that's limited to the Independence Performer, the office, OIPA, or whatever it is. That's my thought.
Stewart or Bob? Bob?
Yeah, my thoughts, and I agree with Paul as far as the website is concerned. I think it needs to be very clear and very accessible to the public once it's published. As far as what the process should the reports come to the audit committee first and then go on to the board? I'm assuming, Mary, that the report itself has already been issued to management. Is that correct or not? Or are you coming to the audit committee to expect the audit committee to approve the report, and then it goes off to management and finalized and gets to the website?
I would feel, and we, the audit committee, is somewhere involved in that process. So I feel safer if at some point in the process we see it, right? There's not a configuration, Mary, where we wouldn't see the report first before it's published. Is that true?
Well, so yes, definitely before it goes up on the website, but I'm not really looking for the audit committee to approve my report. I'm looking for, and to answer your question, Bob, definitely prior to me bringing it to the audit committee, I would share the information with Hassan. I would give Hassan the opportunity to respond. And then the response along with my report would come to the audit committee, the full committee, to share that information and to get their response. And then I would see it at that point going to the website, but that's sort of where I'm asking, do we go to the website at that point, or do we go to the board with an action first? I think at that point, once it goes to the audit committee, it's public information anyway.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, there are some situations where I'm going to use common terms, Mayor. The audit committee really is the final authority, right? You bring it to us, it's in our plan, we sign off and it posts, no problem. There are other circumstances that really require the board to sign off on it, right? So, you know, you'd have to almost take it item by item, but then at that point, if the board is the final decision maker, it doesn't go up on, it goes up on the website usually because when you present it to the board in the board packet or something like that, right? But the final version only comes after the board's approved it. I'm not sure I can think of a case where it's like that, but I know there are circumstances that they get final word and there's other circumstances where we have sort of a final word. Does that make sense, Mary?
Yeah, but I'm not really, I think the word approve is where we got to clarify. The report doesn't necessarily get approved. It's already, there's basically an audit done. We've already got it approved either through the audit committee as a special request audit or on the audit plan. So that's already approved. The auditor, which is me and my staff, move through the audit process, of course, following professional standards. We come up with a finding and a recommendation, and then that final report, unless there's circumstances where there needs to be some discussion with a subcommittee, like, you know, the matter is more, needs more flush, I think, then that would, of course, before it was even brought to the board in a public setting, would have a discussion with like a subcommittee. But at that point, it would come to the board for not approval, but for discussion, or I'm sorry, the audit committee for discussion, not approval. At that point, it's public. And so it can go on our website, which, by the way, Paul, we do have our own website already on SANDAG. Yeah, it's already there. And so that's where it would be posted. But then I guess what I'm looking for is under conditions, Bill, where the board may need to take action. So the audit committee may decide this is a recommendation that we are saying SANDAG should take, not necessarily if they want to, but should take it. Then that may deem it necessary. And the committee may say, I want this to go to the full board for action. And that's really what I'm looking for, Bill, is that part.
Yeah, I can think of a situation, Mayor. Your report says SANDAG should take this corrective action. I'm just making this up. Hypothetically, they should hire 4 more financial forecasters to work on such and such. The audit committee can't sign off on that. That's a board decision, right? So the report that says Mary suggests that they hire 4 more forecasters, yeah, that's public, but it's not final till the board acts on it.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. Hassan, do you want to?
Yeah, I think I'm probably where Mary, the minute you do a report, whether it went to the board or not, it is public. Right. The public have the right to know. So. But it's not final until the board takes action. Yeah, but even if it's not final, somebody could say, even if the board changes direction, the first report that Mary gives out is already public and has the public have the right to do it. So I don't see an issue with the posting procedure. It becomes really administrative issues. Yes. But as far as I'm concerned, the minute she finishes the report, I respond to it from a management standpoint. It's public, and anybody could request it from the public, whether the board likes it or change it or act on it.
And I guess what you're saying, Mary, is the board makes the decision, no, we're not hiring any of those forecasters. Well, that's okay. Then maybe you update your report to say the board considered this and declined or something.
But her report will still be that report.
The report would not be updated. It would simply be that the board chooses not to accept or make my recommendation, and it's done there, really.
Yeah,
Chair Baber, I'd like to make a comment that Stuart Halpern has had his hand raised.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Stuart, I can't see you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt all those good comments. But just if I could offer a couple of points, I think perhaps to clarify, I would wholeheartedly agree with Hassan that process-wise, when Mary completes a report, I think it needs to be presented to management, because getting the management's response to the report is a very, very important consideration on how we as an audit committee and perhaps then the board will follow up with the report. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. It also seems to me that, as I think Hassan said, after management responds to Mary's report, it then go up on the website, be made public, because that's where the public needs to have the opportunity to comment on the report, which will then be discussed at an upcoming audit committee meeting, right?
Yes, exactly.
Then it seems to me that the deliberations, if you will, at the audit committee meeting, I would agree with Mary, are not about us approving the report, but presumably she'll make recommendations. And I think where we have a role is to provide insight for the full board as to whether we want to recommend to the full board that they adopt Mary's recommendations. So
Yeah.
If I may, Stuart, I totally agree with you, and I think Mary and I agree on this. Once her report and my response makes it, doesn't matter whether the board or the audit committee approves it, it's public. Now, she makes recommendation to you, you can make recommendation to the board. That doesn't change the report and the response to the report. That's my point. Yeah, and I think Mary agrees with that, right?
Yes,
and then if I could just follow up with just two other points. You know, then I would hope, Mary, you will have an ongoing process of monitoring the follow-up to the recommendations, presuming that, you know, the staff agrees to board to implement the recommendations. But there's one other element of this that I would just like to speak to, which is a little bit different, which goes to the reporting of the hotline. Not just the reports, but the, I guess, I don't know if allegations is the best way to characterize it. I would advocate that there be reporting on a real-time basis, and for our committee perhaps on a monthly basis, of hotline instances, if you will, which you then can speak to whether or not they rise to the level of requiring a follow-up report, or if you've been able to determine that there's not substance. I think it's important for transparency that we do something of that nature.
So Stuart, that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up. That is another part of this request from you guys, is to get sort of more direction on that. So it was and we're working on that right now to submit to you in July, both sort of a summary, and we're hoping to do this on a quarterly basis, sort of a summary of all the external and internal audit reports, their corrective action plan if they have one, and then the status of that. That's going to come on a quarterly basis, or, you know, however, and that's sort of what I'm looking for. Do you want it quarterly? Do you want it every 6 months? And I'll explain to you in a minute why. And then also on the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline reporting, to provide you that on a quarterly basis, sort of the cases in a very general sense, and if they've been closed, what's the outcome, and proceeding with that. So that's sort of this discussion along with that is, you know, do you want it on a quarterly basis? And the reason I'm kind of hesitant even on a quarterly basis is because, you know, it takes a while to get through audits and to update it and corrective action plan. So I'm almost thinking quarterly, there's not going to be a lot of change, but there's going to be a lot of work for the auditors to put that report together. So maybe every 6 months bring that, or at least annually. We intend to do it annually no matter what. But, you know, right now we're working hard to bring this sort of summary together because, frankly, in the past, SANDAG has not really published any reports or put them in one place. So we've been working hard to uncover and find all these various audits and bring it together onto one sheet, and then also set up a tracking of that on the corrective actions and the status and who's the owner of that responsibility. So we've been working to compile that, and we will have something in July for you. But really, again, my request is, do you want it, and how often do you want it?
Bob?
Yeah, to answer your immediate question, ask you a question. Is that, as far as I'm talking only about the hotline, and the allegations that come through that. I don't have a problem with a 6-month summary, but on a monthly basis at our meetings, is it your intention to report out on those allegations that may have occurred? You may not have finished the audit, you may not have finished the investigation, but they occurred between the time of the last meeting and the current meeting. Is it still your intention to do that?
I can definitely, yes. I can, on the status, just like I give you a status update on the IP office, I can include in that any fraud, waste, and abuse cases in a general sense that we're looking at or that we've closed. And of course, if we've closed them and they're not, you know, confidential of any matter and came to no conclusion or there was no findings, then I can definitely share that. And even bring that determination, because I do like a report of findings, and bring that to the audit committee.
Okay, all right. My other comment related back again to the process of your audit reports and going through. I agree with pretty much everybody else. I think that I don't think the audit committee has the authority to approve your reports. That's not why we're there. That's why I like the idea once the report is done, you've got your management reports or your management comments, these are finalized. I don't see any reason why it can't go out on the public website. Again, it needs to, in the next step, to bring it to the audit committee. The audit committee discusses the recommendations. If there are recommendations that we think need to go to the board for a final decision, then we can do it at that point.
So I had initially thought about putting it on the website after it came to the audit committee, but it sounds to me like you're all comfortable with putting it on the website before it comes to the audit committee?
No, Paul Dostart is not. And so Bob answered, I was going to address a question to Bob and Bob, both of you. I guess I did, excuse me, I thought, well, Hassan made the comment, as soon as you get management's recommendations, it's done, post it. I guess I had a view that it should come to the audit committee first and be looked at by us before it gets posted. I think that we are in charge of that report. Up to that point, it is it's our staff that's preparing it for us. In my view, it's obviously going to become a public document, other than if it involves, you know, employee things or whatever in a way that's confidential. But I think I'd prefer to have it come to our committee. What I guess I would prefer is that when Mary's office does the report, it comes to our committee with a recommendation, and it's that we would have some sort of default that it goes immediately on the website after we've received the report, unless we take an affirmative vote to not post it and draw attention to it in some way. That we can't just hold things forever.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay, let's play this out in real time. Mary writes a report. I'm going to give you this hypothetical, and it says SANDAG should hire 4 more forecasters. Hassan's team reads it and says, no, we only think we need 1. Okay. So you have a little bit of conflict there. It comes to the audit committee. Well, according to the Brown Act, everything that comes to the audit committee is put out to the public. So we don't need to worry about posting it because it gets posted with the agenda and everything else. Okay. So then as a Brown Act item, it's put out, right? And then it comes, but it's not a final, it's not final. And then the audit committee looks at it, and I don't know what we do at that point, if we officially accept it, acknowledge it, receive it, approve it. I'm not sure what the term is at that point. Let's assume the audit committee is at that point is the final arbiter, then Mary posts it, right? But it's not hidden from the public, because the public has to see it before it even gets to the audit committee. It's just when it comes out. Then if there's Mary, if there's a situation where there's a section of it where it's the board's decision on how many forecasters to hire, it goes to the board, and the board says, we make a motion to hire 12, okay? here's my question to you. If you post your report that you said 4, Hassan said 1, but the board made the final decision to 12, maybe you're not, quote, changing your report, but you should put something next to it to say, here's how the board decided it. Why? Because then it's not transparent. If the public looks at it and goes, Mary said 4, Hassan said 1, but the real answer is the board said 12, they'd have to go look through some other place to find the 12. How could we put the final outcome on your website? It's not part of the report, but it's relevant. How would you do that?
I think we could do that. I think that's a good point, Bill. I think we don't change the report, of course, but I think you're right. We do need to, what if the board decides something different than all of us? I could put like a spreadsheet or an Excel summary that says this item went to the, this report went to the board and here was the action taken by the board or something like that. I think that, yeah, so I'm thinking, in every case, I would prefer if the report first went to the audit committee. And that's another question, a good point, Bill, is do all my reports go either as information or an action to the board, or only the ones that the audit committee deems necessary go to the board?
Well, but let's have that as a different discussion. But in terms of, if the discussion is when do you put it up on your website, I would put it up on the website at the same time that Tessa publishes the agenda because it's already out to the public, right?
So you're saying to do it at the same time that I bring it to the audit committee?
Yeah, and you bring it to the audit committee, I don't know what, I forget, it's usually what, like 3 days, it's posted 3 days before the audit committee or 4 days, depending on the day, week. Yeah, it's already. So my answer, going back to Paul, it already goes to the public. It goes to the public when the agenda is posted. That's when Mary puts it up, or Mary doesn't even have to put it up because it's already put up through the SANDAG system. Does that make sense?
Well, it goes up on my website different than when it goes to the agenda. So that's, if you want me to do it the same time I bring it to the agenda, is put it on the website, I can do that.
Yeah, just do it at the same time. Sync it up.
I do see that Stuart has a question, but before you go to Stuart, may I?
I'm so sorry, Stuart. Because of my glasses, I can't read the little details. So,
no, that's
so if Bob or Paul see Stuart's hand, say, "Hey, Stu, go ahead."
Oh,
you have the floor, Stuart.
Okay, sorry. I apologize. My audio was off just for a minute, but I just did want to get back to the notion of how the hotline is a little bit different. Mayor, I would just say that I think there's public benefit to posting the hotline, and I'm using the word allegation, which is not a good allegation, a good word, sort of more in a real-time basis, because imagine you're the person who brings something to that hotline, you call in a tip, you sort of want to see that there's visibility, that it's being dealt with, even if all it is being recorded and displayed as we've received this. And so I understand that your office will take some time to actually do the work, even to validate these things. But I just put in a last thought that I think there's public good to actually having transparency and reporting on those on a pretty much of a real-time basis.
So Stuart, can I just respond to that real quick? I agree with you. So just so you know, as soon as I get that, it comes automatically, that report, the complaint automatically comes to me directly. And probably within the same day or 24 hours within, I notice them that I have received their complaint, and I will review it and I will get back to them, and I always give them a timeline so that the complainant is always aware, pretty much right away, that I'm looking at the matter, and then I keep them pretty up to date. And the only concern I have about reporting that on a public website is it very well may be, in the eyes of the complainant, something huge and material and egregious, but until I really get in and identify that, it may absolutely be nothing. And my only concern is that we shed a poor light on SANDAG that shouldn't have been shed that quickly.
Yeah, I guess, I just have a little bit of a different point of view. I think Paul raised the fact that, the city of San Diego had one that was quite egregious. And I just think that, again, there is a public benefit for sometimes giving visibility in a protected way, of course, to those things. It actually may bring other people to come forth that may have information on an incident. In any case, I respect your opinion. I just, maybe this is one of those agree to disagree.
So Mary, for the way we've done this item, can you just absorb all this information and just put it in policy? Or do you need something formal? And if you need something formal, would it be better if you took our comments, came back to the next meeting, wrote up, here's our policy, and then we'll vote on the policy that you write up next time? Is that, which would you like to do?
I like that idea. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, and when I write the policy, I want to write it to where it's going to be a good policy that everyone agrees upon, which is why what I'm hearing so far is the reports come at the same time they're released to the audit committee. It goes up on the website. There's a direction at that time to the board, either that there's an action or just information that goes to the board. Either the report gets shared informationally or by an action to the board. And then when it comes to the quarterly reports, are you wanting them quarterly, every 6 months? I kind of get that ironed out a little bit before I write a policy on it.
Okay, who wants to, the first part I think you've captured. So answer the, maybe is that you, Stuart, who on the quarterly, do you want to answer her question?
From my point of view, I think we all understand that it takes time to do these reports, but in terms of just the transparency on what's in the hopper, and that sort of thing, I would argue for more frequent rather than less.
I can give a verbal update. I agree with Stuart. I can give a verbal update like I do already with other audits and stuff, and include the fraud, waste, and abuse reporting in a general sense. I can give that we're currently working on X number of cases and they involve this situation.
Bob and Paul, are you okay with that? Bob?
Hey, can everybody hear me? I'm okay as far as the hotline stuff is concerned. I think I agree with Stuart. More frequency is better when it comes to the actual allegations, and verbal response is fine with me. And then with a summary, maybe every 6 months, that summarizes kind of the status of those things.
Paul?
Yeah, the one place that I think I'm probably at different than the rest of the committee, that's fine. People can have different views. I'll tell you my thinking, and you can correct me if my thinking is specious. If I were to make a Freedom of Information Act request in the midst of Mary's report, that she's busy gathering data here, there, and everywhere, and I said, I want all of the data you have in your work to date. Turn over everything you've done to date, even though it's incomplete. I'm not, is that subject to a FOIA request?
Amberlynn, I'll leave it, let's let Amberlynn answer that.
Generally speaking, it would not be subject to production under any sort of request for public documents because the document is not yet final.
And so that's where I'm headed on this, is that I think it's fine for us to receive from the performance auditor, Mary, what I would view as a draft. But this goes right back to the foundation. I think she's preparing it for us, and it is when we receive it as written that it ought to become posted and so on, because otherwise I think it's being finalized before we see it.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. It's a draft, and when we publish our notice for the meeting, we put that document, the Brown Act, okay? Public gets to see it. The draft goes to the board, and then we say, Mary, it's perfect. And then we go on, right, Mary? Or you're saying it's not a draft when it comes to it?
The report is not a draft when it comes to the audit committee. It's a draft until I have a final response from Hassan. So the report, an audit report, it doesn't change unless there's further evidence or something provided by SANDAG staff that changes my finding. And that's all flushed out prior to even getting a final response from Hassan. So the report comes to the audit committee done and final and not changing. It's a recommendation. There's findings in it. It's already been flushed out with Hassan and staff. Hassan provides a response, and that response, along with the final report, comes to the audit committee. And then from there, it's up to the audit committee to say, I believe, for instance, this recommendation needs to take action. We want more than just a recommendation. We want to see change from here. And Hassan doesn't agree with me. Well, that goes to, you can say as an audit committee, this needs to go to the board for action. And then that's what you guys would do. Or you would say, you know what, we really don't think it's an actionable item by the board. We're just sending it to the board for information purposes.
What if, Mary, we didn't agree with you're saying it's not a draft to us because we're not auditors. We don't get to sign off on it. But you bring it to the audit committee and the audit committee says, we 100% disagree with your findings and your process on section 7. So we would say, we would vote, we reject section 7. We do not approve. We recommend the board not accept this, but sections 1 through 6 we do, right? I mean, we have a right to say yes or no to some of it, right?
You can absolutely, as a committee, say, we disagree with your recommendation, Mary, and we're going to, not send it to the board, or we're going to send it to the board stating that we disagree with your recommendation.
Okay, so it's, Paul, I guess I'm translating Mary, it's not a draft, it's a final to us, but we don't have to accept it.
Yes.
Okay, I guess
functionally it's a draft. It's functionally it's a decision to be made to us, but it's technically not a draft.
Right, because it doesn't change because you disagree with it. It just is a disagreement, and it's noted at action that it's a disagreement.
Got it. Okay. So having said that, can we send, so we can move on, can we send this back to Mary to bring something next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any members? Do we have any public comments on this, Tessa?
Thank you, Chair. I do not have public comments on this item.
All right. So let's go to now we're on item 7. Board requested audit on regional transportation congestion improvement program 3. This was a specific request that started with Chairman Desmond, and we thought it was discreet enough that we could handle it. And Mary, do you want to report on it?
Yeah, so again, this came as a request from Supervisor Desmond, basically wanting OPA to perform an audit to determine the allocation percentages by years for roads and transportation, and whether the expenditures to date were allowable, proper, and sufficiently supported, and in accordance with the guidelines. In addition to that, we know that there are audits already performed around the regional transportation congestion improvement program fees, but we would make sure we looked at that audit and did not overlap or duplicate any work that's already done. However, with that being said, we have priority audits and we have limited resources, as you're all aware. So with that being said, our priority still remains, even over this audit, the salaries and benefits and the contracts audit. So I'm recommending that you do allow me to allocate some hours to this audit, but not started until after we have finished the salary and benefits and really gotten underway with the contracts audit.
That sounds good. Mary, I have to ask you a procedural question. Was this something that Chairman Desmond contacted you and said, hey, look into this? And if that were the case, then I would want the audit committee to sign off on it. Or was this a situation where Chairman Desmond made a motion in front of the full board and said, we, the board, direct the independent auditor to do this? How did this get to you? I actually don't remember.
It did. It was a discussion at a board meeting, and Desmond, there was a vote, and Amberlynn, I'm going to ask you if you recollect different than me, but there was a vote, and part of the vote was that Desmond wanted an audit done around this area. And then I followed up with getting clarification from Desmond. What is it exactly you want me to look at? And that's where I got clarification on the audit. So it was through the board.
Okay, then Amberlynn. Go ahead.
Just for
clarification.
Amberlynn?
Yes, sir. If I could just clarify, yes, at the February 28th Board of Directors meeting, the board took action and voted to direct the audit committee to review the RTCIP expenditures. So it was by action of the board.
Okay. So now, Amberlynn, the procedural question we're discussing is, okay, we have the assignment because the board can give us the assignment, but I would interpret our scope of authority that we can set the priority of that assignment in a reasonable number, meaning we don't have to do it the first thing, we'll have to do it eventually. Is that a fair interpretation of the audit committee's authority?
Yes, and I would say that the board's action did not include any specific deadline or time to return to the board.
Okay, so so factoring that in, Mary, do you need our approval, or you're just telling us how you're gonna prioritize it?
Well, I kind of am looking for your approval to, since it's not on the audit plan, I'm looking for your approval to allocate hours to that. And I do have hours set aside for board requested audits. And I've also, in addition, spoken to Supervisor Desmond, who agrees that, yes, there are other higher priority audits and that he's okay with me waiting on this. And he agrees that it is not a priority, but would like it done.
Okay. So then, do we actually need a formal motion to tell you when to do it, or you're just informing us that's how you're going to do it, and we're generically saying sounds good to us?
Well, and that's something I'm going to ask Amberlynn to discuss, because I'm not sure if we need a formal. Really, I'm looking for a formal motion on allocating hours that are not on my audit plan for this audit.
Okay. So, Paul, Bob,
yeah, I'll
make that motion.
That Mary come up with a budget and present it to us, but plan to be moving ahead on it as it fits in accordance with other priorities. Was
that your hand raised on a second, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good enough, Mary? Do you need something more?
Well,
yeah,
is that Stu? I can't.
Yeah,
tell.
sorry. Before we vote on this, I'm just curious if there's any other background to help inform the decision, because I have to say, as I look at what's asked here, it strikes me that there's perhaps not total, but truly significant overlap with the fiscal and compliance audit work. And so on the one hand, I'm wondering what's really being asked that isn't already done by the fiscal and compliance audit work, part one. Part two, I guess also going to what's the rationale for the request. You know, there's a real big difference between the notion of we're looking for some management information, right, which can be, you know, which is very different from we want to audit things as if we feel as if there's something that's inappropriate has taken place. And so it's just not really clear in my mind, you know, how this.
Okay, so Mary, the board gave us the assignment and you're allocating time, but Stuart's asked, what's the context here?
So Stuart, just to, you know, as I stated inside the item 7, I'm going to assure that there's no duplication of effort. That's why I said I did briefly look over the audit that was done and what they verified or vouched in the audit. And it really isn't as detailed as Desmond is asking for it to be. The procedures were not as detailed, and really, at least from their findings, did not really get into the allowability, if they were sufficiently supported. So I think that they just checked more ledger balances versus if the expenditures were used appropriately. So again, I looked at it briefly. I did not see the kind of detail around the appropriateness, if it was supported, and that extent or that deepness going in. However, with that understanding, I do intend to make sure that there's no overlap or duplication of effort, and that would be the case for any audit that I did.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So so Paul made a motion, Bob seconded. Stuart asked some questions. Are we settled to vote on this? Okay, then call the roll.
Thank you. I would like to say for the record, there are no public comments on item 7.
Thank you.
And sorry, the roll call vote for this item. Chair Baber.
Aye.
Vice Chair is absent. Mr. Dostart.
Dostart is yes.
Mr. Halpern.
Halpern, aye.
And Mr. Monson.
Yes.
Thank you. That item passes unanimously with 1 member absent.
Okay, so now on item N, not our last item, it says call on Yen. Is Yen available? Oh, Andre's going to take that. I'm sorry. Before I go to Andre, do we have any public comments on item 8? Okay, so Andre, who's here in the room with me, and I can see him. Andre, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, members of the committee. So, SANDAG Board Policy 39 authorizes the Audit Committee to recommend to the Board of Directors which firm to contract with to conduct our annual financial statements audits. So Crowe LLP, who's our current independent audit firm, has a 5-year on-call contract that permits SANDAG to issue on an annual basis a task order for auditing services for each year. The auditor has completed the fiscal year 2018 and 2019 audits and is commencing work on the fiscal year 2020 audit. In fact, just yesterday we held our virtual entrance interview with the auditors. So the financial audit program is comprised of several components, and we've included those on page 2 of this report for your information. In July of 2019, the Board of Directors approved the Audit Committee's recommendation to exercise the option with Crowe LLP to conduct the fiscal year 2020 financial and compliance audit. So today, the Audit Committee is asked to consider whether to, 1, recommend to the Board of Directors that SANDAG's current auditing firm, Crowe LLP, conduct the fiscal year 2021 financial and compliance audit, or 2, issue a new request for proposal. Thank you.
Okay, and then before I hear board comments, Mary, do you have any comments on this item?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Real quick, I think, you know, at this point that the board should kind of look, or the audit committee should kind of look at the length of stay. I know that some auditors, especially around school districts, have to change auditors every 3 years for objectivity reasons. And I just think that the audit committee should consider looking into, after the 3rd year, the potential of looking at other options as far as firms go.
Andre, I might have missed this. How many years have they been doing this exact task for us?
Yeah, so this is the 3rd year that they've been doing it, that they are starting their 3rd year, and they have the option for 2 more years.
Okay, let me take it. I'll start with Bob. Do you have comments on this?
This is, Andre, this is a 5-year contract, correct, that we have with them?
I'm sorry, could you say that question again?
This is a 5-year contract that we have with them, and they're into the 3rd year.
That's correct.
Okay. Have there been any concerns with the performance of this particular firm in the last 3 years?
No, you know, honestly, this firm has been a great firm for us. And, you know, one of the advantages, I think, of this audit firm is the fact that they are virtually, can do their audits from in their offices. So as opposed to a lot of other audit firms that come and spend a lot of time in your office, sometimes they'll be camped here for several months. Typically, they're here to gather the information, and then they can go back based on their technology and work from their offices. So actually, in a year like this, it's been kind of a blessing. There will be obviously some contact with them, trying to exchange information, but on a very limited basis. So this has been a great firm for us right now.
Go ahead, Bob. I have a question, but go ahead.
Okay, one more question. As far as the engagement partner is concerned, has she been an engagement partner the last 3 years?
Yes, Kathy Lay has been our engagement partner for the last 3 years. I think, you know, again, I understand the concern that Mary Kay is bringing about. I think we had that same thought with Davis Farr, who was our previous auditors, and what we did in that case is we asked them to rotate their partners, so at least there was a different set of eyes, but within the same firm still. But at least we knew that we were getting the sign-off from a different partner.
All right, go ahead, Bill.
Oh, no, that actually answers my question. I was asking about the rotating partners. So, Stuart, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think on the one hand, this committee did not participate in the award of the original contract, so I kind of have an interest in, you know, having this committee engaged in the process going forward. But, you know, given that they performed what seems to be a fine job, and particularly if Andre's saying that it works particularly well for them in the near term, I don't have a problem going forward. I think out of consideration for Mary Kay's perspective, after 3 years, perhaps for the 4th and 5th year, the rotation of partner concept might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Paul?
I have nothing to add to what Bob and Stuart said. They make perfect sense to me.
My question, okay, Andre, does SANDAG have a operating procedure that suggests the rotating firms or rotating partners? Is that actually written down somewhere, or it's just sort of you evaluate each circumstance differently?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's written down anywhere. I think it's more a general good practice. And again, I think audit firms themselves come out and also recommend that they do that. So I think it works well both ways.
And then, Mary, I'm, you know, obviously the least knowledgeable on this. Is there some sort of government standard operating principle for how frequently you rotate?
No, other than with school districts, because of the situation school districts got in with bankruptcies and stuff, they found that the auditors were being used over and over, and as a result had clean reports when in fact they weren't clean or shouldn't have been clean. And so they did put in a government code that requires a rotation of auditors every 3 years. I just think that it should be, we should consider other firms and determine if they, you know, this firm or another firm through that process might be a better fit for SANDAG. And, you know, just look at the overall processes. I know that sometimes, you know, Andre made a statement that, you know, they know as well, and it's kind of convenient that they're not always up in our hair and stuff, but sometimes we need them to be up in our hair. And I think that's just where I think it's a good option for the committee just to look at all options out there and then make a determination based on that.
Mary, not something we're going to decide today, but would it be within the scope that in some future report or analysis that you make a recommendation that, you know, it's not exactly the school district standard, but, you know, it's a written standard of how you do that? Is that something someday we should recommend to the governing board?
I think it would be a good recommendation. It's just because in general, not specifically because of SANDAG, but in general, we're dealing with a lot of money on an annual basis and high risk projects such as capital improvement projects. And also the fact that we receive a lot of federal and state money, and not that this firm is not capable or reliable or isn't being objective, just that I think because of the high risk inherently that SANDAG has around the different types of monies and also the types of projects that we're dealing with, that we have that as a potential policy in general.
Okay. I don't know where that would be appropriate in your workflow if that's risk analysis, but if you want to bring back something like that to us in the future, why don't you do that?
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay. But in terms of this particular firm, Andre, what exactly what do you want the audit committee to do here, or if anything? What is the request you're making to us?
Again, the recommendation is up to the audit committee, but coming from the staff's perspective, you know, 5 years I think is a good term. with potentially asking the firm to rotate their partner. So I would recommend that we move forward with this firm for fiscal year 2021. But again, that is up to the audit committees.
And for clarification, Andre, fiscal year 21 is year 3 of the 5-year contract terms, right?
Sorry, no, they've done 18, they've done 19. They just kicked off 20. So 21 will be the 4th year.
4th year, okay.
So Andre, are you asking us to recommend 2 more years or 1 year? What do you,
I think this comes up on an annual basis, so I'm asking that this year you recommend that we go forward with them for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, so Bob, Paul, or Stuart, does anyone want to make that motion?
Well, wait a minute. We've talked about rotating the lead partner if we go into year 4. So is that, Andre, can you address, is that part of what you're recommending or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it would be reasonable for us to ask that they rotate their partner if that's the will of the audit committee.
Okay, so
this would be a Bob Monson motion to make.
Yes. And guys, if you haven't figured out, I generally take the rule that the chair doesn't make the motion. The chair generally seconds it. So that's why I'm looking to you like to do it. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we accept the current firm to do the fiscal year 2021 financial audit with the caveat that the engagement partner be rotated for that particular time frame.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, call the roll.
Thank you. There are no public comments on this item. Chair Baber?
Thank you.
Your vote?
How are you,
Bill, yes.
How are you voting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Vice Chair is absent. Mr. Dostart?
Dostart is yes.
Mr. Halpern?
Halpern, yes.
And Mr. Monson?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you. That item passes. With
I
one
take it there are no
absent.
more continued public comments, Tessa?
Correct. There are no more continued public.
Okay, so that concludes the meeting. Can you put in the minutes, Tessa, that we adjourn in the name of Paul Jablonski? I was going to say something about Paul, but I think Hassan covered it. And then our next meeting is currently scheduled for Friday, June 26th at 12:30. And I'm assuming even if we're still under the lockdown, I'm looking at this room. If any of you want to attend and we keep 6 feet apart, please do. I'll probably come back here, but I won't be so lonely if you join me.
I think that now that San Diego's reopened, Bill, we will be able to do it live, correct?
I don't know, Andre. We'll figure that out. But the point is, even if we're under the current rules, there's enough space there that we could meet, and we wouldn't even be 10 feet next to each other. Okay? All right, so I'll see everybody the June 26th, and then Paul and Mary and I will get together on that independent counsel. Okay,
yes,
thanks.
enjoy.
James, do you want to cut us off?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.